officials around the world are keeping a very close watch on a new virus in China.
At least 6 people have died in an outbreak of the new coronavirus.
It's officially hitting the U.S.
We have very little problem in this country.
In New York, the death toll continues to rise.
Wuhan has allowed people to leave the area.
We will be suspending all travel.
It's a new report from U.S. intelligence finding that China misled the world about
It comes from China.
Was it a wet market, as the Chinese insist?
The pandemic will definitely change the world order.
It's a staggering transformation.
We're used to seeing the United States as the epicenter of global power, not as the epicenter of global disease.
The US on top, but for all the wrong reasons. The highest number of cases, the biggest death toll in the world, and largely by its own hand.
By April, in theory, when it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away. Testing's frankly overrated. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute.
He was slow, inconsistent, self-obsessed, prone to prescribing quack remedies. This is kind of the world's worst performance, I think, when it comes to leaders and the coronavirus pandemic.
Now, that woeful performance is changing the way the world views America.
Everyone is COVID positive in these hallways.
America's soft power had already taken a hit, and what's happened in this period is that that hit has got harder because we've seen America's performance be really below par. So I think it has led to a loss of confidence around the world in the United States.
And that's a problem for America because superpowers often rely on a certain degree of bluster to maintain their dominance. When their power is tested and weaknesses are exposed, their power becomes eroded, like the British Empire after its humiliating retreat in the Suez Crisis of the 1950s, or the Soviet Union after its defeat in the Afghan War of the 80s. And as the US spirals, China's on a mission to rise to the top. For nearly a decade now, China has been expanding its power and influence through its Belt and Road Initiative, a $1 trillion master plan spanning the globe with investments and infrastructure projects. And right now, COVID-19 is providing an opportunity for further expansion. There's an old Chinese proverb which goes, when the winds of change blow, some people build walls and others build windmills. And that is exactly what China is doing, searching for opportunities to cash in on the chaos, to build its empire.
While the United States, much of Southeast Asia, and in fact a lot of the world are still deep in their crisis, it would make sense for China to take advantage of that moment.
In contrast with America's catastrophic handling of the virus, China's been able to flatten the curve efficiently, if often in brutal fashion. And while it may have been the first place hit by COVID-19, China's also one of the first to recover.
Businesses have come back online, factories have returned to life. This will be an economic advantage for China.
As it rebounds, Beijing is resuming an aggressive foreign policy, deploying its military in the South China Sea, going after Indonesian fishermen, even sinking a Vietnamese vessel last month.
Some of these aggressive moves we've already seen played out in recent years, but perhaps this is an escalation on some level.
And all that while trying to paint itself as a hero of the pandemic. In what's been dubbed mask diplomacy, China is shipping billions of masks, PPE and ventilators to countries all around the world, with the corresponding photo op, of course. The old Belt and Road now being used for a new Health Silk Road initiative, providing aid to those battling the pandemic. It's the kind of thing America once did.
Now, absolutely, Beijing is portraying itself as a responsible global power, as one of the countries that is able to provide these services around the world.
But despite these efforts, China has lost face during the pandemic.
We must be frank about one of the primary reasons this outbreak spun out of control.
Particularly questions for China. It comes from China.
The virus has already killed 250,000 people and laid waste to the international economy. The idea that this will be good for China's international reputation and its soft power seems naive to me.
Distrust in China is growing after questions around Beijing's handling of the outbreak and its lack of transparency. Questions Australia is determined to have answered. Our government stuck its neck out, leading the charge for an independent investigation into the origins of COVID-19. A reasonable request, for sure, but one that leaves us open to the kinds of economic retaliation we've already seen.
What I'm really concerned about is a trade war.
We don't need another beef with China.
Australia is deeply disappointed by the duties on Australian barley.
I think that it was the right thing to do, and quite often doing the right thing is the smart thing as well. Sometimes we need to take stances that are brave. Sometimes we need to stand on principle, even though it makes us feel uncomfortable. But that, I think, is what Australia's interests will require in this new post-pandemic world order.
But however that move plays out for Australia, it might have the upside of earning us some international respect at a time when both superpowers are losing some. And because we're handling the health crisis well, it's possible that whatever power America loses isn't automatically filled by China. Competent middle powers like us might gain influence.
I think this is in some way a superpower race to the bottom, where Australians have demonstrated disappointment with both the United States and China. If ever there was a moment for small, well-managed, competent countries to come together, I think this would be it.
The smaller, more agile, well-run countries like New Zealand and Australia, like Germany, South Korea, Taiwan. One opportunity for Australia is to cooperate more with those kinds of countries. Think of it as a coalition of the competent, if you like.
It looks likely that the pandemic will accelerate the decline of US power, with China trying to step into the breach with its mask diplomacy. But if that falls short, it could leave a gap that few would have predicted. We could be looking at a more influential Australia. It just needs us to change the way that we see ourselves.
I don't think we should see ourselves as an onlooker or a cheerleader. Australia is a player, and increasingly we need to look after our own interests. We need, of course, to maintain a strong alliance with the United States. We need good relationships with other countries like China, but we also need to invest in our own capacities, and we need to believe in ourselves, because I'll tell you what, if we don't believe in ourselves, then no one else is going to believe in us.
Isn't that interesting, the opportunity that could come for Australia? Like, I was hearing someone talking about the film industry in LA, for example, and how it'll be a while before that gets back up the way it was. Could Australia be a place where more films are made? We do it so well down here. Even friends who are in manufacturing, we're thinking, how can we restart doing our stuff in Australia? Like all these new ways of doing business and taking opportunities away from the rest of the world.
We are so used to being the onlooker, as it was pointed out there, aren't we? The thought that we could be, higher. Like, you got mum and dad who are fighting at the moment. And we're just looking on, but maybe we need to take reign of the house.
But isn't it interesting that we got to believe in ourselves. We can't downplay it.
But also be prepared to be independent. So I think for understandable reasons, a lot of the world has seen us as basically being hitched to, previously it was Britain, now America, not really an independent voice on a lot of things. If we can make that step, who knows? There are opportunities there.